Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. Now that the vast majority of rosters are set as we head into Call of Duty Vanguard, I wanted to go through and start making some tier list videos. So in this one, of course, there are two rosters we don't know yet. We don't know what's going on with Paris, and we don't know what's going on with that NRG spot that used to be filled by OpTic. Once those two come along, we can go ahead, we can look at those rosters and where they fit in. But for now, I wanted to go ahead and I wanted to focus in on the AR duos from those top 10 squads. I feel like many of these squads are going to be carried by those AR duos. We have had some top ARs in our game, like for example Octane, who was on a 9 through 12 roster last season, who have been picked up, who have been paired with another AR, and now all of a sudden they might find themselves in a different tier as we head into next year. So I'm super excited for this one. As always, in the comments, let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with. Do you think some people should be shuffled around? As always, these tier lists can be a bit controversial. This is just how I view it right now. So without further ado, let's go ahead. Let's hop into it. The last thing that I want to point out as we look at our tier list here is that I can only, so I put it on myself to only put 3 in each list. So I can only have 3 in S tier, only have 3 in A tier, so on and so forth. So if that wasn't the case, maybe I would have some people moved around, but I really wanted to make a distinct difference between who's in S and who's in A. So as we go ahead and get into our first roster, I'm starting it off with the AR duo from Seattle. When it comes to Seattle, that AR duo is made up of Mac and Accuracy. Now, I will say, just because they're in C tier, I think that this is a fully capable AR duo. I could see them absolutely standing up against some of the teams that are in B tier and A tier. I think that these two can play. I just think that the top 7 in particular are so top heavy that sometimes when you have these mixtures of people that might have been cut last year or people that might not have ended last year on a season, they just, in my mind right now, don't really compare with some of the top 6. But with that said, I like what Seattle's doing with Accuracy. I think they needed a veteran presence to come in, make play calls, really establish a culture there for Seattle, which we haven't really seen over the last couple years. So being that that's going to be a pretty young team, I think Accuracy is perfect for that. And when it comes to Mac, we have seen Mac have some phenomenal series over the last 2 years. There have been times where he is the difference maker in that match. Moving forward, we just have to see that a bit more consistent, and I think it'll come. So right now, I do have them in our average C tier, but if I'm Seattle, I'm pretty comfortable with these two being my AR duo. Moving on, over 1 to the B tier, I have the AR duo from the Minnesota Røkkr. So when it comes to Major and Priesta, again, if I'm Minnesota, I am beyond happy to have this AR duo. I think they definitely excel in S&D. We saw the role that Major plays in S&D when he came back into the fold after being dropped towards the beginning of the year. Once that Stage 5 Major came around, they were absolutely clicking on all cylinders. And again, a team can perform well, can win Majors with a B tier AR duo. I just think when it comes to Minnesota, what drives them is the SMG duo, and most notably Standy. The way that he's come into the league and kind of set it on fire, he is the gold standard for that squad. And when this AR duo plays well, which is the vast majority of the time, Minnesota plays well. So I'm happy right there if I'm Minnesota having those two in the B tier. And again, they are a phenomenal AR duo. I just think that there's so much top talent at the AR position that has been combined throughout this roster mania that they're pretty much there at B. Moving on into the A tier, and we'll see how people feel about this, but I have LAG. So this might be a bit of a surprise. Again, we can talk the ins and outs and where they compare, but I really feel like, especially with the way the year ended, Slasher was playing super well. Before Gunless maybe got a little bit demotivated by how his team was playing, Gunless was absolutely shredding, especially throughout the first two stages. I think if you look at these two players just based off of what they bring to the table and their skill sets, there's no doubt about it. They are an excellent AR duo. I fear, now I'm not taking a ton of this into consideration, I do fear that as the season goes along, there might be a little bit of discrepancy there. There might be some players that get disgruntled. And if that happens, then absolutely give me the Røkkr AR duo over them, no doubt about it. But if you're just going based off of skill, there's no doubt about it. You cannot deny the skill of Slasher and Gunless. So I'm comfortable having them in A. I just hope everything goes well around them. So that's the first A tier AR duo that I have there. The next one, and this is one that everybody knows they're going to be in S tier, so I'm going to put them first, and that is the AR duo from the Atlanta FaZe. When it comes to Cellium and Arcides, these guys can do it all. Arcides, towards the end of last year, really wasn't even popping off, but just the fact that he is that IGL, he is that calming voice that gets the Tiny Terrors and Cellium into the places that they need to be, that alone puts him in S tier. And of course, when it comes to Cellium, he can do everything on the map. In my mind, he is the best flex player in the world. So if you're Atlanta heading into next year, if it's a 3 SMG meta, fantastic, because you can run a Cellium with SMG, and when he has that in his hands, he is better than any other flex on this table. It's just the way it is. So if you're Atlanta, you have to be super comfortable. Arcides, Cellium, S tier, no doubt about it. We don't even have to say much. Let's go ahead. Let's roll it back over to C tier. The next squad we have is the rookies from the London Royal Ravens. Now, I will say, as the year rolls on, I don't think this duo will stay at C tier. I could see them moving up. The fact that we haven't really seen them on the pro scene. Yes, they combined and they won basically everything when it came to EU challengers, but it's a little bit of a different ball game, right? When you're in the CDL, you're not playing other squads in EU challengers. You're going to be playing Arcides and Cellium and Slasher and Gunless and some of these other top tier AR duos. So I think as the year goes on, we'll see them move up, but just the fact that they're brand new, we're going to leave them there at C and move along to our next B tier team. And this might surprise some people also, but I've got the Florida Mutineers at B tier, and that might sound a bit preposterous, but when it comes to the Florida Mutineers, show me something. I've heard for 2 years now how good Skies and Awakening are, but throughout the entirety of Black Ops Cold War, they didn't really do much, and that's with a top SMG slayer like Neptune on their squad. Yes, he might not be a BZ or Simp or Standy or Shotzi or whatever, but at times, Neptune was an absolute assassin on the map, and Skies and Awakening and the rest of Florida still really couldn't make waves. There was at no point in time where I sat back and thought, okay, this is the major where Florida wins the major. I think that they are a good duo. I think if you put a top tier SMG duo alongside them, such as what's happening with Minnesota, absolutely they can win tournaments. But right now, I don't think they belong in A tier or S tier, just because of the simple fact that sure, they can play well, but I haven't seen them do it on the biggest stage, and they haven't been in those grand finals. So I'm going to keep Florida there at B tier. Now, a lot of this is because there are some absolute units in A tier and S tier, which moves us into, I'll be interested to see if people agree with this, also NYSL. So the old vets, Crim and Clay, a lot of people probably have them in S tier, but I feel like, and a big part of this is because there's so much talent in S tier. And I think once the rest of this gets filled out, I think you'll understand why I have them in A tier. But if you're looking at S tier, I made it to where there's only 3 spots, and I think there are 3 rosters that I prefer over Crim and Clay. Most notably, and I've been getting flack on this over my last couple videos, I feel like if it's a 3 SMG meta, there's somebody here that's not going to compare with what can happen with some of these other flexes around the league. And you can argue that all you want, but I'm sorry, Crim or Clay running an SMG is not going to give you as much as Celium running an SMG, as Priesta running an SMG. I just feel like as Illy or Dashy, whoever they decide, it seems like Dashy's going to be the main AR, but if one of them run an SMG, they're just so talented. I feel like there's a bit that lags behind with this NYSL roster. Now, if it is 2 ARs, I think that you would be absolutely ecstatic to have them on your squad, especially when it comes to making the right play calls and being the best IGL. I think there's no doubt about it. They're the best IGL duo when it comes to ARs in the CDL, and that definitely goes in their favor. But there are times where you don't quite get the production out of Crim that you're getting out of some of these other ARs. This is probably the most controversial pick in terms of who might be moved up to S tier, but we can argue that once we go ahead and get the rest of this filled out. So the next squad that I have in S tier, you guys can probably pick up on this one also, is the Toronto Ultra. So when it comes to Toronto, there's no doubt about it that these two absolutely led this Toronto squad through the Black Ops Cold War season. As soon as they made the move to bring in Insight, it was almost instantaneous that Toronto was competing for championships major after major. And when it comes to Cammy and when it comes to Insight, I think they're 2 of probably the top 5 ARs in the game right now. I would put Celium up there, and you could debate the other 2, but I just feel like Cammy is so good. He's always making the right plays. They play together so well. They're super intelligent how they move around the map. I just feel like when it comes to all those intangibles, they have got them. And oh, by the way, they're pretty gross also. I feel like there's no doubt about it. S tier is absolutely Atlanta and Toronto. There's from there, I feel like it might be a step down, but those 2 absolutely the 2 best AR duos in the league, which brings us to, I only have 2 duos left. And at this point, you guys probably know who they are, right? I have the OpTic duo of Dashy and Illy. I have the LA Thieves duo of Octane and Kenny. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to put them both out there. I think right now, the 3rd S tier AR duo is that from the LA Thieves, and I put that OpTic Dallas squad in A tier. So first of all, let's talk about the S tier squad in LA Thieves. I think when it comes to Kenny, he is one of the most talented ARs in the league. I think when it comes to Octane, there's no doubt about it. You cannot talk about how he's not one of the top AR talents. You cannot dispute that. What he's done the last 2 years, yes, you can talk about maybe not being as good of a leader as Clay or Crim. You can talk about maybe not being in the right spots all the time like Cammy is, but when it comes to just being an AR talent, I think Octane is one of the best in the world. And when it comes to Kenny, you need him to run an SMG. Absolutely, he's going to do it. He's going to shred. Now, the only downside of this duo is that we haven't quite seen them at those top levels, at least not in the last couple years, right? We haven't seen Kenny. We haven't seen Octane on main stage. We did see Octane and what they were able to do during that Stage 5 major and how they eliminated the Atlanta FaZe, but I want to see them in big-time moments before I think, okay, maybe they're up there with Atlanta or they're up there with Toronto. I just feel like they are so talented as individual players that they deserve to be at S tier. And then at A tier, the last A tier squad, and this is not in order. It's not like I have the LAG squad as a better AR duo than the OpTic squad. I just have them in columns here. But when it comes to this OpTic duo, I feel like the only thing they're missing is the in-game leadership that you get from a lot of these other squads. Arcides is going to make the right calls. Slasher and Gunless, probably going to make the right calls. Even if you look at the Minnesota squad, they showed last year in the Stage 5 Major makes the right calls. And when they do, they can win a major tournament. Same thing with Clay and NYSL. Same thing with Cammy and Insight at Toronto. I feel like that's the only piece right now that might be missing from that OpTic duo. You can talk about how talented they are. You can talk about how well they play at S&D. I just want to see it happen before I move them over to S tier. So, again, if I had my pick of this Atlanta AR duo, the Toronto AR duo, the LA Thieves, the OpTic, the NYSL AR duo, I don't care which one you give me. I will be ecstatic with any of them. But for this video, I wanted to make it to where I had 3 in each category so that I could say there's a clear difference between this squad and that squad, and it's going to be controversial, but that's where I have it right now. So if you think NYSL should be an S tier, if you think OpTic should be an S tier, if you think somebody else should be moved up or down, let me know in the comments. I cannot wait to see what the replies are on this one. But as always, if you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a like as it helps out the channel. And with that, thank you guys so much. I will see you in the next upload.